Hi friends, hi, how's it going? For those of you new here, my name is Donna. Super happy that you found me today. If you are interested in all things colorful, dabbling in a little bit grungy, a little bit princessy eye looks, lots of sparkle, lots of color, and you are a woman of an age that they potentially are telling you you should not be wearing that out there, I feel you. I am in that boat myself, so I am here on this platform to tell you everything. It's all okay and you are in the right place, and I hope that you want to stick around. Today is Monday, so that means it is another palette roulette video, and as you can tell by the thumbnail, this maybe wasn't necessarily my most favorite palette, and that's a good thing actually, because I kind of stan ABH. So the fact that I can come to you and say, I kind of hate this palette is a good thing, because it means that I can still show some kind of like baseline for my expectations, and no matter what, like, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to tell you the truth about it all. This is the palette that we are reviewing today, and this is the ABH Riviera. So this came out actually March 2 years ago. So this was, I do believe, the palette that stemmed the Rocket Fire releases that they had in 2019. So they had this one, and then they had another one, and then another one, and then 15 more. I do have them all. This one, however, was not one that I was going to pick up. I think the one that came out right after this one was the Alyssa Edwards palette, I want to say. I did pick that one up instead of this one. That one just wooed me just a little bit, spoke to my soul a little bit more. This one is the Riviera palette, and they produced this one with paradise themes and springtime color palettes is what they said. It does have the white and blue like striping that you would expect from, like, you know, the regattas out there. Is that what they're called? Yacht, fun, boat stuff. Obviously, I'm not into that kind of stuff, but it also doesn't have the felt packaging that most ABH palettes are known for.
The sidewall waters all the dang time. This one, for those of you that are new, is my wonky eye. We call it the wonky eye.
So it's not got the felt packaging that most other ABH palettes have, and that was a good thing, right? I think this is the first one that came out without that felt packaging. So this is what the front of it looks like. It is just a canvas cover onto cardboard, and then the back of it looks like this. It does have the sticker on the back that says it has the shelf life of, what, 18 months, I do believe. Tells you what the palette is, tells you how much it weighs, and tells you that it is cruelty free. It also tells you that in here there are eyeshadows and pressed pigment shadows, which we'll get into in a second, but that it is made in the USA, and the brush that is with it is made in China. So you open it up, it does have a nice mirror. I never take these stupid things off, and I should, because the mirrors are actually quite good. It does bend all the way back if you want it to, and then these are the shades that are inside of this palette. It is colorful-ish, but not as colorful as it appears, honestly. There's only really 3 super brilliant colors in here, and they are these two here and this one here. This is beautiful, but it is actually in my eye look today. Can you tell? I didn't think so. This does have 14 shades and has 3 finishes in it. It has matte, metallic, and duochrome finishes, which we'll get into later. For those of you not new, you know how we roll here. On ABH, this does have a 4.7 star rating. There are 1,931 reviews on this palette on that website. And then on Beautylish, it does have a 4.3, 4.5. I could not exactly tell, but I know that it's not quite at that 4.5 stars, but there are only 12 reviews on it. I would honestly give this a much lower 4 point something scale rating. The biggest reason why is because I do have many ABH palettes. I'll link my ABH ranking up in the cards so that if you haven't seen it, you can go watch it. This doesn't really compare to all the other ABH shadows that I have in my palettes. The biggest reason why is because they do really quite well with shadows. They do really quite well even with Pressed Pigment shadows. One of my top 3 palettes from them is Subculture, and that's mostly Pressed Pigments, and that is a palette that many people cannot stand because of how it performs. I found that there were a lot of shades in this palette that actually performed the same way that many people say Subculture performs. So it really kind of shocked me, honestly, that this had such a high rating. It does have 0.392 ounces of product, which means each one of these pans is 0.028 per pan. That's really low. That is pretty much what all ABH shadow palettes have inside of each pan. It launched as a limited edition product, but it is still for sale. It does come in at $45, but right now, currently, you can actually get it on Beautylish on a BOGO. It's on sale, and you can get it on a BOGO. So you can get 2 of these palettes if you want one for you, one for a friend, for $31.50. So steal of a deal. And that was going on as of the time I'm filming this. So it is cruelty free, it is gluten free, and they market it as the Essential Brights palette. I'm here to tell you this isn't a Brights palette. This white, however, is probably one of the best white shadows that I have in my collection in entirety. So I use that white so much in my brow bone, in my inner corner, in my eye looks to just create a little bit different like tone in an eye look. I've only got pictures of a few eye looks because, you guys, the first day I used this palette, it took me 5 hours and 3 eye looks to get an eye look out of just trying to get. I mean, I gave up at one point, put it down, walked away, and then started again. Mostly because my eyes were so irritated at that point in time that I was like, I can't I can't put any more eyeshadow on my eyeballs. They are going to fall out of my head. So I really can't. I don't like this palette. And in my palette ranking for ABH, I think I ranked this at number 10 because I hadn't used it yet, and now having used it, it will still be at number 10. And there is another palette in this collection that I have that I haven't used, the Sultry palette. This one will come below the Sultry palette. I guarantee you is gonna stay at number 10. I did not like this palette. I did not have a lot of fun with this palette. There are 3 shades in here that are not intended for eye use. They are the Pressed Pigments in the shadow in the palette. And if you don't know anything about Pressed Pigments, know this. The FDA is pretty archaic, and it says that there are certain things that you cannot use in eyeshadows or they will not be great for use on the eye. With that said, the UK does not have any of this thought process behind eyeshadows. Theirs is a little more updated. So, and Jen Luv's Reviews does a crazy awesome video on what it means to be not approved for the eye. I will direct you down in my description box. Her video will be down there. She just tells it how it is. With that said, I do use all my Pressed Pigments on my eyes because, hello, I'm buying a shadow palette. I'm going to use the shadows on my eyes. But with that said, I can tell you, for me, they did not irritate my eyes. They did cause staining. They're all 3 here. So we have this one here, this one here, and this one here are all considered Pressed Pigments, which means they are all considered not safe for eye use. This one left staining and this one left staining. This one did not. The brown is in my eye look today. Today is the first day that I have been able to get this brown to work for me. I have tried to put it into other eye looks and it kind of like lifts whatever is underneath it, creating a void in my eye look, which pisses me off. This is a brown. This is a deepening shade. This is something that you should be able to... why is that a Pressed Pigment? I have no idea. That's not typical for a brown. Browns typically are not Pressed Pigments. The purple did the same thing. The pink I really did not have a hard time with, but these 2 shades here, horrible. They're horrible. And ultimately what it came down to was, again, like I've said with Subculture, packing them in and not blending them out at all. Like literally leave them where they lay. So you're going to have a harsh line. But know that also, if another color is blending into them, you are going to see some kind of void in your eye look. The shimmers in this palette are super loosely pressed for the most part, and they go onto the eye really, really well, but they go onto the eye really, really well if they are wet. If they are not wet, if they are dry, there is a little bit of a struggle bus there. You will see that they work better with your finger or a wet brush, much like any other ABH shadow. The mattes are super powdery in the pan. What I can say about this palette that is different from many other ABH palettes is that these are super powdery in the pan, but it doesn't really translate to fallout in your eye. Typically, if they're super powdery in the pan, you do see an enormous amount of fallout in your eye. And I think that you can see in this little like dude here, there's a ton of powder in there. And this was the first time I used this palette over this last week. So there's a lot of kick up in the palette, but it's not, I didn't notice any kind of fallout, which was odd because ABH does typically have a lot of fallout. And maybe, like, there's just, you know, conspiracy theory here, maybe because it doesn't produce fallout, that might be the reason why I struggled with it so much. Maybe the formulation in here is quite a bit different than what I'm used to for ABH, and maybe I was walking into this expecting a palette that I know what to do with, a formula that I know how to work around, and didn't get that. That might be why I struggled with this palette so much. It didn't apply very well at all over bare skin, which I don't find to be the case with many other ABH palettes. I find that I am able to put these on any kind of base and they last for hours on my skin, like days. We're talking days. These didn't apply very well on bare skin at all. You really need a base, and with that you need more of a, like, almost a tacky base, especially if you're going to be using the Pressed Pigment shadows in this palette. Let's talk about the Pressed Pigments. So, or the fact that this is supposed to be a brights palette. If I cover up these two shades and this shade, does that still look like a brights palette to you? No. So what I would say is that you might get hung up on the fact that there is also, you know, that really pretty gold in here, and that looks bright, but honestly, like I said, it's in my eye look. It's like out here on the outer corner. This is it right here, and it does look rather gold. It produces itself on the skin more as a yellow. I do like it as a yellow, and that is it. But in an eye look, it kind of mutes away. Unless you are just packing it on and it is the only color on your lid, it doesn't wear well with any of the other ones unless it's a completely opposite color. So even though there is this yellow in here, we do have the pink and the purple here, and we do have this blue. It's not exactly a bright palette that they want you to believe it is. And I think that if we rearranged all these and then covered up the last four in the palette, you could pick out 4 colors in here that might be bright. But other than that, it's all very muted in tone. So this is more natural is what it is. This white, though, like I said, is an amazing white. It's super pigmented. It is beautiful on the inner corner of an eye look. It is also beautiful in the brow bone area, and it is one of the best whites in my collection. So I will be keeping this palette simply for that white. I honestly really did dig this color too, as well as this color. But what I will say is they remind me an awful lot of the Carly Bible palette, the Away and Jode shades, except for not as pretty. And when I reviewed that palette, I said that they're unique to my collection because they kind of have these reflex that are very strange for the color that they are. These don't have the reflex that those two shades have, but they remind me of those two shades. Maybe just a slightly different version of them. What I loved about this gold is that this gold actually, like you saw it on the back of my hand, it actually produces as yellow, and I like that because I don't really like a gold, but this is considered a gold. I would say it's more of a yellow shimmer, which I love. That's also kind of unique to my collection. I don't really have a yellow shimmer. I have a gold shimmer. I have white gold shimmers, but I don't have like a yellow shimmer. And then I have to be honest with you, it slates that there are mattes, metallics, and duochromes in this palette, but I mean, the duochromes are supposed to be Seaside and Yacht. So Yacht is on my eye look today. It's definitely not a duochrome, and the other one is Seaside, which is this one here. I do think that this one could be duochromatic. I did have it on an eye look that you guys will see in pictures. It is one that I think that it could be duochromatic, but it says that it is a silver with a blue shift. I think it's just really a light blue. It reminds me of a kind of like a baby blue in an eye look. So I don't know that I would necessarily consider those duochrome. Like when I think of duochrome, I think like huge shift. These definitely are not huge shifts. We're going to do some swatches of this palette. So these are the first 4 shades in the palette. Look at that white. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so we have this one, which is called Sails. It is a matte white. Then we have this one, which is Yacht. That one is the duochrome. It's supposed to be a taupey duochrome with a violet shift. I just don't think that it's got a violet shift. I don't see it. Tell me if you see it. And then this one, which is called Seychelles, right? Seychelles. This one is a really pretty aqua blue, but it doesn't really, there's not really a lot that it can go with in the palette, so I just found it odd that it was in there. And then this one, that one is called Palermo, really pretty pink. I really did love this metallic. Then we have the last 3 in that first row. So we do have that other duochrome, which I said might be a duochrome. That is Seaside. That one is supposed to be a silver with a blue shift. I just think it's like a light blue or maybe even a lavender. I'm looking at it here. It does look like it's a lavender. I can definitely see the shininess of the silver, but I still would not consider that a duochrome. I don't know. Let me know. All right, and then there's that gold one, which is called Inheritance. It is just a metallic gold. I feel it shows up more orange, orange yellow. And then the last one in that top row is this one. That one is Mediterranean, and it is a metallic sky blue. So the 2 that I said really remind me of OA and Jode in the Carly Bible palette are these 2. This one here and this one here. I do think that they are slightly different, but I do think that if you have a Carly Bible palette, you have those shades. So the whole top row is mostly shimmers or metallics, as you guys can see. There's only the one matte in that top row, and that is that white. These are the first 4 shades of the second row, and these are all mattes. So we do have this one here, which is called Estate. It is a matte, like light peach. It's very flesh toned, and you cannot even see it on my skin tone. Then we have this one here, which is called Cabana. This is in my eye look today. This is buffed in towards the upper part of the brow bone. I laid it down in my crease before I laid that brown in. And then we have this one here, which is called Coastline, and it is a darker matte peach. That one at least you can see. I did like this tone. It did very well for blending out a lot of the shades in this palette. And then we have this one, which is your first pressed pigment that you're coming across, and it is called Bahamas. So here's what I would have to say. Where does that fit in? I just don't see where that fits in. Like if there were other colors to go with it, and we do have another pink coming up, but I also think that the tone of it is not right to partner with that hot pink. But I digress. Last 3 in the palette, those 3. So this is the pink called Monte Carlo. I don't know, in the monitor, it looks like they partner together very well, But I put them both in an eye look and I was like, I don't know that this necessarily looks good because the tones of them are just not right together. And then we have the purple, which the purple was the absolute worst in the palette, and I think you can see that by the swatch. So I'm going to dig in just one more time, and we're going to go over the top of that a couple more times, and that is the purple in the palette. Sorry, this is called Canes. How do you say that? I think it's called Cans. Con. Oh my god, I don't know. Okay, this one is called Cans. That's what we're gonna call it. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but that first swatch that I did that turned out so poopy, you can still see that first swatch underneath the second swatch. It just doesn't layer at all. It doesn't layer well at all. It doesn't blend at all. This is my kind of color. I really wanted it to work, and it just didn't. And then we have the brown, which kind of does the same exact thing. Again, it's the Pressed Pigments. I get it. I know that they're hard to work with. I'm not new here. I do know that it takes a minute to work with them, but I was not able to appropriately work with these Pressed Pigments like I have worked with Pressed Pigments in the past. Go back, if you're questioning, go back into any one of my Norvina palettes and see my thoughts on those. Like, I, in the end, was able to make them work well. And in the end, I made these ones work well as well. I just did not have a good time with these shadows. My son's vacuuming, and I really wish he wasn't. You guys can see the staining, right? From the purple, the pink, and the brown. That is pretty indicative of Pressed Pigments. You're going to see some staining with Pressed Pigments. That doesn't offend me. But if it does offend you, know that that is there. Again, the shimmers are mostly loosely pressed, so there was kind of a lot of fallout on my hands from these shimmers, but again, I did not really see a whole lot of fallout on my face from these shadows, which is pretty indicative of an ABH shadow as well. There's typically fallout. If you want to try ABH and you're concerned about fallout, this might be the palette for you. The mattes are so firm in here, and maybe that's part of the problem because I'm used to the mattes not being as firm. But the shimmers are pretty loosely pressed, so they kind of go everywhere. I did not find these to be any different from any other ABH shadow in the way that, you know, they're really creamy, they feel good in the pan. The mattes feel a little bit grippy. You are going to feel a difference between those ones and the shimmers if you do dig your fingers into the pans, which is, you know, some people like it, some people do not. I am not the kind of person that likes to dig my fingers into pans. What I will say too is this one, even though it bends all the way back, me having bent it all the way back, it doesn't like to shut now, which is aggravating and just noteworthy. All ABH palettes come with a brush. It looks like this. I still have it in its package because I won't use this brush. So I'll pass it on to my daughter or somebody else who can use it. One side of the brush does have like a packer side, so it's a little bit flat, and the other side of the brush does have a fluffy side, so it's for blending. These brushes are awful and scratchy, and I never use them. After I used my first one, I swore I would never use them again. Do I think that it's nice that they put them in there? Sure, but I think it would be nicer if they took the brushes out entirely, because they're crap throw-in brushes anyways, and made the palette $5 cheaper, to be honest. I can almost guarantee you a person getting these ABH palettes doesn't use the brush because the brush is awful. So there's that. So I will be keeping this in my collection. There are some shades that I do like out of it, but it isn't my favorite ABH palette. I felt bad for really saying, is this the worst ABH palette? But I really feel like it is. And I feel like I have enough palettes that I can say this is the worst one in my collection. And I do have Subculture, so for those of you out there that want to rake all over Subculture, I love Subculture. All right, So we are going to pick a new palette. I do think that I got some new palettes in that I forgot to put in here, but I will rifle through that at some other point. So in order to pick a new palette, we just press that button there. It rolls for us and it gives us a new palette. So I'm going to press the button. This is the Ace Beauty Paradise Fallen palette, so I am going to go get that. I will be right back. All right, guys, this is the palette that we will be using. I'm actually pretty excited. I don't know that I've tried anything from Ace Beauty before. I'm excited because this is all kinds of purple. And I do love a purple eye. What I will say is I will probably also be floating in some of my singles with this palette. I feel like I can't use just the purples and grays and whatnots in here, so I will probably end up pulling from my singles to help this palette out. I am excited to use this though because I don't know that I've tried anything from this brand yet, and this palette is actually rather new to me. I do have 3 of them in what was like I think a 4 palette like structure, but I just brought these into my collection via an edit sale from FabFitFun. So I'm excited to use this. I hope that you're also excited to see me review it. What palette are you using? Palette a week? I would be interested to hear. And what are your thoughts on the ABH Riviera palette? I would also be interested to hear. It really pains my heart to come to you and say, I hate this palette. And maybe it's not hate, maybe hate is too strong of a word. So I just don't like this palette. It's just not my favorite ABH palette, but there's always one. I feel like there's always one. So that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you'll consider giving it a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. I also hope that you're considering subscribing before you go. I would love to have you along and see more of you. And I'm just so happy that you found me, and I want you to stick around. And if you want to see more of me, YouTube will be referring you to another video of mine. Or I do believe I put a couple up in the cards, so just have a blast. Go in, watch those videos. It's super fun here, and I can't wait to see more of you in my comment section. With that said, don't forget to hit the notification bell if you do decide to stick around. I wouldn't want you to miss anything, and I do upload content 3 to 4 times a week. Yeah. That's it. That's all I have for you, cookies. Just stay healthy out there, stay safe, and love each other, but love each other from afar. And until next time, bye everyone.